Hey guys, welcome to the Warrior's Journey. I'm Jesse Chen. Before we get started, I just want to share with you that I see you. I used to be there too. If I had a bad day at work, I would bring that energy home into the relationship. If she had a bad day, it would take me down. If there was something going on in the politics or in the news, it would totally hijack my complete energy and complete life. And so, what I'm here to share with you today is the thing that I wish that I had learned 20 years ago because it would have changed my entire life. And I am certain that it's going to change yours. So as we move forward on this program, things are going to come into greater and greater clarity as to how this information shifts your entire way of thinking and can shift your life in a very, very short period of time. There is work that you need to do. It doesn't mean that you can just snap your fingers and instantly you're a different person or that she is, but you will go through this entire journey and you will learn. And as you learn, you are going to be able to claim that you are working on yourself because that's really what she's looking for. She's looking for you to commit to the process of personal growth. Now, if you're not in a relationship, you may be interested as to, well, why should I take this? Because this is the sort of information that you need to have to be clear about your sovereign center without someone else in your life. When you know who you are, who you truly are at the center, then it means that everyone else fits into your frame. Again, this is something that I wish someone had taught me many, many years ago. It would have saved me a lot of pain. But while you're working on yourself and walking on this path, you are going to learn, you're going to grow, and you're going to see shifts happen in a major way that are going to lead to your highest growth. So here's what you need to know. Your relationships are entirely dependent on your frame of mind. Your life is completely dependent on your frame of mind. When you have a strong frame, then you have a stronger level of peace, which means that regardless of what's happening at home, at work, or on the news, you are centered, you are grounded, and you are responsive, not reactive, responsive to the situation from a place of peace. And you walk in your life as a mature masculine man, being at peace and being present with the people in your life. Okay, this is how you actually elevate and lead in your relationships. This is masculine leadership. It's not telling someone what to do. It's not manipulating. It's not controlling. It's not dominating. It's protecting your peace and protecting your center. Because at that point, when you can walk through life and be completely confident in who you are, regardless of what anyone else says, that is that confidence, that magnetic, seductive confidence that really gets people to say, oh, wow, that's someone that I want to follow because that person knows himself. So the stronger your leadership vibration, the more magnetic you become. The more magnetic you become, the more stress-free your relationships at work and at home become because you're clear about your center and she can trust you knowing that you know how everything fits together. Again, this is not about over planning, over controlling, dominating, anything like that. This is about being clear and centered. When you're clear and centered, she can stop being concerned about needing to protect her own heart, okay? Because in relationships, especially romantic relationships, there is always going to be a masculine feminine dynamic. You may have heard about this. It's called polarity, okay? And when you are not in your masculine, she will rise in her masculine in order to protect her own heart because she doesn't trust you to protect it. So how does that manifest? It manifests in conflicts. It manifests in shutting down, the silent treatment. It manifests in less bedroom activities. It manifests in terms of her complaining about things that are going on in the world around you without feeling like she is trusted and safe in the relationship. So the intersection of your relationships, your healing, her healing, and your higher leadership is right here, and that's what we're going to get into. All right, before we get into Find Your Center, I want to introduce you to the King, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover archetypes. These archetypes were developed by masculine psychologist Dr. Robert Moore and his co-author Douglas Gillette of a book by the same name. And these forces, these energies exist within all men. I like to think of it as the masculine mind and the feminine heart. Men and women have both. So really these archetypes are in both men and women, but it is vital and critical in relationships for men to do this work. Because what we're talking about here is our psyche. We're talking about our own castle. And so you can think of this as the king sets the direction for the kingdom. He sets the boundaries for the castle, right? The warrior goes and protects those boundaries and monitors the wall and protects our presence. The magician understands how to work with energy, information at work, for example, information in a relationship, information within ourselves, so that we can transform that energy into sustenance for the castle, something good for the castle, right? And then the lover energy. The lover is this force that if the lover is not sitting on the castle with the king, then it cannot be a benevolent kingdom. He ends up becoming a dictator or a tyrant, right? He's not a king. And if he ends up looking for love from outside the castle, he ends up shrinking into the weakling prince. He also ends up shrinking into the mama's boy, right? And so the mama's boy dynamic, which is something that is near and dear to my heart because I had to overcome it myself, is something where our energy is looking for that love and for that approval from the outside world. It doesn't come from the mother or the mother archetype within your partner, okay? It comes from within yourself, but it's only going to come from within yourself if you balance these archetypes and you get your king, warrior, magician, and lover online and in balance, right? So the most important archetype to develop is the warrior. Why? Because the warrior is the vanguard that allows the other archetypes to emerge. The king cannot be safe in his castle. He cannot have a castle without a warrior to protect him, right? He cannot have, the magician cannot create his potions and create his transformation of different energy without a warrior to protect him. The lover cannot come forward, whether it be in the bedroom, the boardroom, or otherwise, without the warrior to protect him. So this king, this warrior, the magician, this lover energy is accessible and within all men, but it's usually out of balance because of something that happened in the past. And so the warrior's journey is about going through this journey so that the king can rise and the mama's boy dynamic can stop. Because I guarantee you, if there are challenges in the relationship, it's because this mama's boy energy is hijacking the relationship, usually without you knowing. It becomes a clingy or needy guy, or it becomes a guy who doesn't have any direction. And so he's looking for someone else, his partner, his boss, his parents, to tell him what to do. This work that we're talking about in the warrior's journey is about becoming our own sovereign masculine man. That means that you have to have that king, and it means that you need to have that energy so that mama's boy dynamic does not sabotage your relationships. I see this in so many of my clients, that this mama's boy dynamic comes through, and so they become clingy. But the truth is that 90% of divorces are initiated by women. 90%, that's 9 to 1 difference, right? 90% to 10%. Why? It's not always the man's fault, just to be clear. But if a woman wakes up at midlife and she understands that she doesn't have a man, but that she has a boy, because she's been changing the diapers, she's been raising the kids, and she's waiting for the man to show up, but he's not showing up, then she will initiate the separation. I see this in far too many relationships, and it is completely avoidable. So men, you can do the work, right? And sometimes that goes the opposite direction, where he walks away. Why? Because he's not clear as to whether or not he wants to be mothered, and maybe she's mothering him unconsciously, right? There's many different ways, and all this is stuff that we work on in our VIP containers. But you talk about this energy in terms of the mama's boy, you start to realize, I don't want to be a mama's boy. I don't want to be, more accurately, I don't want to be controlled by the mama's boy. The mama's boy is within all men. He's there, right? The question is whether or not he's controlling, he's driving the car of your life. So what we're going to do in the warrior's journey today is we're going to go through 5 steps here. We're going to find your center. We're going to awaken the warrior. We're going to strengthen the sacred masculine, and we're going to heal your past and live the dream. Okay. Now, when you do these 5 steps, you are going to move away from the mama's boy dynamic and step into your kingship, your mature masculine kingship. Okay. But in order to do that, we're going to have to take the journey of the warrior. And so we're going to start with finding your center. All right, so the first module that we're going to go through is find your center, because the truth is if you don't know your center, then you're going to be walking through your life always being pulled by what the partner wants, what the parents want, what the boss wants, what the politicians want, what the priest wants, what everyone else out there wants, okay? So when you find your center and you know your center, then you know that you can walk through this life as an individuated, masculine, mature man who knows who he is and knows when other people's work is their work and when it's his work, when he knows that it's something related to him and his values and his life, and when it's not. This is really important in terms of a lot of relationships. A lot of guys get themselves all worked up because of something going on that is in someone else's life. It's someone else's problem because they don't know the difference between what is my world, what is my castle, and what is theirs. So what we're going to do here in Find Your Centers, we're going to go through each of these 5 parts that are going to help us really understand what's going on here. So the first is know the ego, right? And I'm going to start making some notes in here just so it's a little bit easier to follow. But like, what is the ego? The ego is the story that you tell yourself about who you are and what your life is all about. So this is about your attachments. Maybe you're attached to a sports team or to a political organization or to your parents or to your car, your job. There are so many things that are attachments in people's lives, and they think that this is what defines them. But if you were to take all these things away, remove your parents, remove the partner, remove the car, remove the job, remove it all, who would you be? Right? So this idea of knowing the ego is really important because we need to release those attachments in order for us to find our center with clarity. Okay? Now, the ego operates from a place primarily of fear because it doesn't know what it is. It seeks to look outside for all those things. So I don't know who I am unless I have this job. I don't know who I am unless I have that woman next to me. I don't know who I am without this political affiliation or this sports team. I don't know who I am. So it's the fear of not knowing who you are, okay? Now, this fear is really important because what happens is the fear can get out of control. And this happens in a lot of relationships where people are trying to figure out who they are without their partner, and they get themselves very defensive when something isn't happening the way they want it to happen. So, for example, maybe you were cheated on. Maybe you were abandoned as a child. Maybe she was. Maybe something happened where she didn't feel safe, right? So the ego is very important to know because then you can know which part of yourself doesn't feel safe. And if it's not just within you, then you can also speak to the part of her that doesn't feel safe either. So again, knowing this is really important. Now, the ego is also formed and shaped by trauma and grief. Now, I have a therapist who said to me one time, grief brings you down, trauma holds you down. So what's happening in your relationships at work and at home that are causing you to go into people pleasing or avoidant patterns or into anxious anxiety patterns, right? All this comes back down to this idea of the ego and not being clear and firm in who you are because you don't know your center. Okay, so again, recognizing the role of trauma and grief here is very, very important. So for example, in Jesse's story, right, and I'm going to take this down to the know your story. In my story, I was the son of a handicapped mother and an immigrant father. That's had a major influence on my life, right? And, you know, like my first kiss ended in rejection, right? Funny now was not funny for the many years that I didn't realize it was controlling me. But when you have these things that happen in your life, you don't realize just how bad they are. You don't realize how much the bullying, how much the harassment, how much of the otherness, the exclusion, how that heartbreak from your teenage years continued to affect you. You don't know because you don't really have a clear relationship with your own story. And the ego is operating off of that story. The question is, what story are you telling yourself? So what we can do with that is we can start to reshape the story that we're actually telling ourselves. Instead of being a victim and being unable to change, we can start to say, you know what? I am the author of my story. And yes, I went through some tough times. I went through adversity. I went through struggle. Maybe I had relationships that didn't work out. Maybe I had jobs that didn't work out. Maybe I had something that was going on with my parents. Maybe it was substance abuse or divorce or abuse or something like that, right? Something happened that really created a lot of chaos in my life. And when there's the presence of chaos and uncertainty in a child's life, what happens? The ego has fear, right? Because it doesn't feel safe. Now, know this for your own story first and foremost, but then start to get in recognition to it in terms of her story. Recognize that all people out there, everyone has adversity and struggle. Now, they don't necessarily always share it, but when you start to get in touch with it yourself, you start to see, this person is just acting from a place of fear. Okay, so when you get into firmer and firmer clarity over your own center, you will see when this person is acting from fear, and recognize that that fear is coming from a place of not being safe, seen, heard, worthy, or loved. This right here is the core element of masculine leadership, helping yourself and others feel safe, seen, heard, worthy, and loved. Now, when you have the ability to recognize fear in yourself, you will then have the ability to recognize it in others. And that fear recognition is really important, because when you know your center, then you're going to see, well, what is the fear trying to tell me? Well, who am I without this relationship? Who am I without this job? I need to win this argument, or I need to be the person who has all the answers. Whatever it is, that fear is going to manifest in the relationship as conflict, stress, and anxiety, not just in the relationship, but in your life in general. Okay, so what we can do is we can start to look at our story and start to see the things that are the good things that came from our adversity and our struggle. And even our previous relationships, you can say, well, I developed kindness, compassion, love, maybe a sense of gratitude, maybe a sense of joy. These are character traits that you developed along the way. Maybe it was resilience, right? Maybe it was strength. Maybe it was focus. Whatever it may be, those character traits from your journey are actually going to be something that you can look back on and say, yeah, I know it was tough back then in those teenage years, or in those 20s or 30s or 40s, whatever it was. When I was not clear about my own story, I was letting a lower vibration story take over. What do I mean by lower vibration? I mean something that's coming from a place of fear, because you've never done this work with your own inner child. That's what psychologists call it. So I introduce you to the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Dr. Robert Moore is based on Dr. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, father of modern day psychologists, and he had a very clear idea of this inner child concept. The inner child is in the heart, okay? The inner child, for all intents and purposes, is your own son. He's living inside you, okay? Now, what he may not have received is he may not have received love and safety growing up from either mom or dad or the partners that he's had in the past. So he feels uncertain. Now, because he feels uncertain, he looks to anything such as the ego and a story to tell him what he is he safe? What if I don't get this job? What if she doesn't like me? Oh, then I'm not loved, right? So this idea of needing to get your love from outside yourself fundamentally comes back from this this weakness of the inner child and this uncertainty, more specifically of the inner child, because you do not have a relationship with him in your own castle, within your own psyche. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're starting to go through the at the high level what the process is to start to create a new story, recognizing that some of the difficult things that you've had in your life, previous relationships that didn't work out, or previous jobs that didn't work out, or whatever it may be, difficult times with your mom or with your dad growing up, with your friends, etc. All of it has led to the development of character. Maybe you're a more compassionate person. Maybe you're a more resilient person than maybe you give yourself credit for. So when you come to awareness of your own character, then you know that where the gaps are that maybe you want to invest in. Maybe you want to invest in courage. Maybe you want to invest in presence. Maybe you want to invest in strength, whatever, focus, what all these are masculine character traits, but they're always available to us in the present moment. And this is what's key. Because remember, I told you it's the king, the warrior, the magician, and lover. And the warrior is the one who guards the castle walls. He's also the guardian of presence. So that means that when you're walking through life and you're in a relationship, for example, and at home, she's bringing something from work or from her parents or from her friends home to you, right? Your job is to remain present. Your job is not to become a fixer. Your job is not to problem solve. Your job is also not to be her therapist. Your job is to be present. Present, compassionate, loving. That means active listening, which is another aspect of character. When you have the ability, the skill to be an active listener, she really appreciates that. It becomes more magnetic. When you are not thrown off, when your love for her is not thrown off by the stresses at work, by the stresses that she's dealing with and she's dumping on you, whatever, when you are not thrown off by that, that makes you magnetic. When you continue to walk with your center, at your core, your very core, you know who you are. You don't need anyone else's approval. You don't need anyone else to give you that job or to go out with you on a date or sleep with you or whatever. You don't need that. When you say that you are very clear in who you are, then you get to a place where she's like, that's someone I can go to because he feels safe. Right? It's the same thing that happens in the workplace with colleagues too. They feel like they can unload whatever's going on in their projects or in their collaborations, relationships with politics, whatever it is, because they can come to you and they can feel safe. And when you are in that present place, living from your center, you can see where they are out of alignment. You can see where they are not in balance. Maybe where the king, warrior, magician, lover, for example, is not in balance. You can also see where their values are out of sync with one another. So what are values, right? Like, let's just write this down real quick. So maybe your values are health, family, love, peace, money, earth, spirituality, God, right? Whatever your values are, you can determine this for yourself. Again, this is the work that I go through with my VIP clients as well, right? So when you're clear about those values, then you know what your center is. You know when something aligns with your values, you know when something doesn't, right? You know when something is out of whack in terms of the priorities. Maybe someone puts their dedication to money far ahead than their dedication to family and love, right? So it's always about knowing your values and seeing where the priorities are out of whack. Because again, for the person, for example, who puts money first, they may see money as the source of their love. They may see that thing that if I make more money, then more people will love me. Or they may see it as, in order for me to truly take care of my own health and my own family, I need to make money. We don't know, but we start to get into clarity as to what those values are. And these are the sorts of important conversations that you will have in a romantic relationship about your values, about character and skill set and how you're working on yourself. So when you know your center, you can get your mindset straight, because then you are clear as to, okay, this aligns with my center and my values, and my character says that, this is how I'm going to act as a man as I continue to walk in this life. Or you can be like, you know what? This is not for me. This is not in alignment for me. Either way, when you know who you are, you become a very strong, powerful, masculine man. Because if you think about it, the vast majority of people don't know who they are. Instead, they are controlled by the fear, the trauma, and the grief of their past. But as you walk this path, you're going to realize that you are actually able to rise above the past. And that becomes an aspect of the warrior when you can live from presence. And she feels that, and it shifts your entire life. So the second module here is awaken the warrior, right? And so remember, we got the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. What is the role of the warrior? The warrior protects the center, right? He protects the kingdom. And the kingdom is defined by defining those boundaries, right? Which is, what are our values? What are our skills and our character traits? What's the story we're telling ourselves? How do we let fear into the castle or not, preferably not, right? All of that is the work of the king making the definition of what is the kingdom, and the warrior protecting it, the warrior protecting the center. So how do we do this, right? Now, the first step is to connect with the breath. And just tactically speaking here, this is stuff like meditation, box breathing, breath work in general. Now, what does that mean? If you're having a hard time understanding what presence means, I'm going to invite you right now to slow down and connect with your breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This now moment in which I'm speaking and you're listening is the now. This is the present moment. Everything that is outside of the now is either the past, which has already happened and we can't change, or the future, which we are projecting based on the past. So the power to change our life exists in the here and in the now. And you will always be able to return to the present moment by focusing on your breath. And a lot of people struggle here because, and this is why there's a lot of weak warrior energy out there, because they don't know how to be present. Instead, they are worried about something that isn't real, the future, for example, right? Like, until it gets here, it's not real. Now, are there practical considerations? Sure, right? Like you need to catch the flight, etc. But until you've missed the flight, you can't live in the fear that you've missed the flight. That would be anxiety, right? And so it's the same thing with the relationship, with it, whether it works out, whether it doesn't work out. You can't get caught up in the anxiety of something that hasn't happened yet. That's the future, right? You need to be in the now. You will also notice that you can't get attached to the past and things that have already happened. That's regret, and that can lead into depression as well. So our work is to be present in the here and now, and that you can always do with connecting with the breath. Now, as you connect with the breath and you become present, you start to recognize the difference between your energy and someone else's energy, your castle and someone else's castle. Can you see that that person is stressed and grieving and it's actually not you? Can you not be hijacked by the fact that that person's upset or that person's stressed or anxious or depressed or whatever it may be? Can you protect your center? Can you protect your castle? And now, this is really important because if you know, you've probably heard the words sympathy and empathy before, right? Now, sympathy is feeling bad for someone. Empathy is almost like feeling bad with someone. But when someone, especially a romantic partner, is going through a difficult time, your work is not to feel bad with them. Your work is actually to model peace and presence. That's different, right? A lot of people are like, oh no, feel bad for me, feel bad with me. No, no, no. You stay in your center. You are the mountain amidst the storm. You are the solid rock amidst the chaos. That is what the powers of the warrior do. And it's, again, all cultivating presence. So see the castle. Know the difference between her work and yours. Okay? Now, if there's something that you're angry about, if there's something that you're sad about, that's your work, right? If you're overwhelmed with things that are going on in the office, that's yours, right? If you're having trouble with a relationship or with your parents, that's your work. If she is having trouble with it, that's not your work, that's hers. The goal is to be able to be at peace and model unconditional love for her during that time of turbulence, okay? Now again, this requires a strong warrior because the lover archetype will not emerge unless she feels safe, unless the heart feels safe. So again, masculine leadership, which exists both in men and women, it's like the masculine mind and the feminine heart, right? The masculine leadership is to protect the heart, starting, of course, and always with your own. If you go and try to protect hers without protecting yourself first, you start to slip into the mama's boy dynamic, which is clingy, needy. That's the little boy in you trying to get love from the outside. You've got to be able to love yourself. You've got to be able to be independent and sovereign in your own castle. Now, part of awakening this warrior is to not just connect with the breath and know presence, or to know what is your work versus her work. It's also to remove limiting beliefs, which is, for example, during a dating process, she's the only one for me. Okay? Now, hopefully you're in a very healthy relationship, you're in a great place. But if anything is causing you to go like, oh gosh, I can't lose this woman, she's the only one for me, I'm going to challenge you on that respectfully, right? And by the way, that doesn't mean she might be the only one for you. She might be the one, right? But you also have to recognize that that's a limiting belief. There's 4.5 billion women on this planet, okay? So she may be the best one that you've matched with so far, but and the same thing vice versa. You may be the best one for her that she's matched with so far. We don't know, right? Our job is to be in our center. When we can be in our center around this person brings us peace, or at least is working their way towards protecting that peace within themselves and can be at peace when they're with you. We've got a great match. Now, in the workplace, right, it's the same thing. You know, is this the only job? So I'm just going to say she's the only one. The job is the only job for you, right? You could say that another limiting belief, for example, would be I need to work 80 hours a week to be worthy, to be productive, to make money. Okay, this is a big one for guys, right? Because we are always looking for something out there to tell us that we're enough, because that ego, remember the ego that we went through here, right, has those attachments. Why are you so attached to work? Why are you so productive? Why are you addicted to work? Because I need to feel that I'm worthy, that I'm enough. Because that ego, that little child inside doesn't feel it because you're not talking to him yet, right? And that's part of the work that we're doing here today, is reminding him in the present moment that you're part of my kingdom, you're part of my castle, and you are protected, you are loved, right? And so removing those limiting beliefs there's many of them, right? Like it can go on, like you have to work out, you know, I have to have big muscles, a beard, fair, and a tattoo to be a masculine man. And I need to work out 20 hours a week to be masculine. These are all limiting beliefs, okay? Is it important to be healthy? Yes. Is it totally fine to have a tattoo? I have a tattoo, right? Is it important, you know, for you to wear a beard or facial hair if you want to? Sure. But be aware of the difference, right? Just be very aware here of what we're saying. The difference is when you feel like you need to have those things and you don't, it becomes a limiting belief. right? So as someone who has, a smaller frame, I went through several years of being addicted to the gym because I thought that I needed to be bigger in order to be a man. But the truth is that's not what it is. What it is and what she wants is she wants safety. That's why some women do go for the guys who are bigger. Why are they going? Because they're getting a primal sense of physical safety from that man. And so it's important to be healthy and obviously be as healthy as you can be without going crazy over it. But it's also important to notice that's her ego. That's that sense of insecurity. So now that same guy may be punching a hole in the wall when he gets home, right? And so does that really create the safety for her? We don't know, right? It's just an example, but an example to highlight what limiting beliefs actually can look like and how they can manifest. So you end up spending 20 hours a week in the gym or an extra 20 hours a week working at your job or at the office because you don't feel like you're enough. You don't feel like, oh, there's any other options. It's a limiting belief, right? It's something that you believe in, maybe that you've been programmed from your parents or from society, social media, from previous partners to believe, but you don't actually have to do that. And that's what limiting beliefs and uncovering those limiting beliefs and releasing them are really important on this journey of awakening the warrior. So developing a practice. Now, what does this mean? So awakening the warrior, right? This is about how you can strengthen your presence so that the warrior can do his job. The warrior exists in the present moment, okay? That is where the warrior protects that presence, but we need to strengthen him in the beginning. And so you need to develop a practice to support that effort. Again, this is stuff like breath work, meditation, journaling, yoga, working out, right? But working out not being flooded with music, but in the meditative space, right? So it's a little bit different. Now, what are your practices? Some people do what's called EFT tapping. That's emotional freedom technique tapping, which is just tapping in different places on the body to bring you back to presence. Now, when you do all of these on a regular basis, a truly regular basis, you're going to not only awaken the warrior, you're going to strengthen him because you're going to know the difference between peace in the mind and in the body. Here's another one, Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is the easiest one. It's also known as non-sleep deep rest, NSDR, right? So you may have heard Andrew Huberman talk about this, other thinkers and influencers talk about this. Yoga Nidra, you just lie there and literally a voice tells you, feel your thumb, feel your forefinger, feel your middle finger, feel your ring finger, but you're not moving the body. You're just focusing your attention on there. So when we're talking about the warrior, we're learning to strengthen our focus on the present. And what Yoga Nidra is doing is we're learning to strengthen our focus on the body. Okay, so you will always be able to find presence in the body. You will note that often when you're losing presence, it's because you're in the mind or you're not in the heart. So you're not embodied, right? So what we're doing here is we're developing a practice. When we develop a practice with these different techniques, when we stay consistent with these techniques, we strengthen our warrior energy and we learn to navigate the world in a way where we are at peace, we are at presence, we are the mountain amidst the weather, amidst the storm. We are the rock, the calm rock amidst the chaos. So you are developing that just by virtue of watching this program today. You are developing that ability to strengthen that warrior. And that's what makes you attractive. It maintains polarity in the relationship because when you can protect the peace, she feels safe. And that's really where the relationship takes on entirely new levels. It's where your life takes on entirely new levels because you start to realize what energy is bringing me peace. Because if you value peace, which is part of the Find Your Center, page previously, right? You may want to say, hey, I do value peace. If it's not on your list, maybe it's time to add it. I invite you to add it because otherwise you'll constantly be in conflict, drama, and stress because you don't value peace. So that's why we go through with connecting our values and Find Your Center so that we can get to a clear sense of what is important to me. The only thing that's important to me, just as a personal example, right, is peace. If the thing that I'm doing does not bring me peace and it is not a temporary situation, but a recurring situation, I need to change the situation. I can't be in a job that doesn't bring me peace. I can't be in a relationship that doesn't bring me peace. It's important for me to find and cultivate my peace. And it is for every man on this path as well. And as we do this, we are then protecting our presence. It's the presence of the kingdom, of the psyche, of the castle, the king, warrior, magician, lover. And again, awakening the warrior is an important step to doing just that. So what you may notice is that find your center makes sense, awaken the warrior makes sense, and you're trying to figure out, well, why do I keep on getting pulled out of presence, right? Because it sounds like if I was living in presence, then my relationship would be completely different. My life would be completely different. So what holds you back? This is what Heal Your Past is all about, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with knowing your wounds, right? Because the things, remember what I said in the earlier slide, okay? So when we talk about finding your center, we have this area of trauma and grief, knowing the ego. This is the ego. Everything before now is a story that we're telling ourselves that the ego keeps track of, right? So when we have wounds, those wounds create trauma and grief. And so they originate from wounds in childhood and also in life, but mostly in childhood, right? So that's the Find Your Center update. Back on the Heal Your Past screen, right? So let's go through Know Your Wounds. Now, what are these, right? I'm just going to throw out a few examples here, and only you can decide how deep you actually want to go here. But like, we can say, got my first kiss rejected when I was in first grade. Seems silly, but it was a wound, right? You can say I was bullied and harassed as a teenager. You could say my mother was handicapped in my teenage and 20-something years, which hurt me as a son who needed to take care of his own mother. So just some examples, right? And those are examples from my life. I will put them out there just to invite you to do the same, right? Like what happened? Maybe it was drug abuse. Maybe it was, your parents had a divorce, or maybe they had screaming arguments, right? Like maybe there was something that happened in your life that led you to this place where you were like, you know what? I have wounds. Yeah, I'm afraid of having important conversations with my partner. Why? Because when important conversations came up in my house, there were arguments. Maybe there were holes punched in the wall. Maybe there were screaming fits. We don't know, right? But I'm inviting you here to start to write that out in your journal, in your notepad, right? Just write it out and say, okay, these are some of the wounds. Now, what you're going to notice is when those things happen, you're going to feel, you're going to start to sense an awareness of, oh, the fact that I, for example, got my first kiss rejected when I was in first grade may mean now you don't initiate intimacy, right? Or I was bullied and harassed as a teenager, so now you avoid conflict. My mother was handicapped in my teenage 20-something years, whatever it is, and now you are afraid of commitment, whatever it may be, okay? You come up with any of these in your world. I'm just giving you an example of how it actually manifests in your life. Now, this isn't about therapy, right? I just want to be very clear. This is about training, because really, what are we talking about here? We're talking about maintaining our presence. We're talking about maintaining our presence and not letting the past hijack us, because those things will have always been there. The question is whether or not they're taking over your life at that moment in your relationship at home or at work or otherwise in your life. So another way of thinking about this is maybe something happened where you're walking down the street as a kid and you tripped off the curb and you scraped your knee up real bad, like one of those big bruisers, right? And as a result, you never go walking down that street anymore. And because you don't go walking down that street, even though you're an adult and you know how to walk off of curbs, you miss everything that's on that street. So that's avoidance, right? So we can be in that place where things happen in our life through avoidance, through that manifests as avoidance, they manifest as anxieties. I don't want to have this difficult conversation. The last time I had this difficult conversation, I got hurt. All that is related to our wounds from the past because it's not now. The only thing that's real is this now moment in which I'm speaking and you're listening. So we need to protect this now moment. This is what awakening the warrior is all about. And when we awaken the warrior, we can protect this now moment and we can make that little boy inside feel safe. Because again, masculine leadership is making the inner child feel safe, seen, heard, worthy, and loved in yourself first, and then in the others around you. Okay, so you get to know your wounds here. I think I've given enough examples. Heal your wounds. So how does this happen? You start to realize that you were doing the best you could at that time. And so was everyone else. Maybe your father yelled at you when you were a kid, or maybe your mother, babied you as a kid, or vice versa. Whatever it may be, you start to realize that was the best that they could do. Now, you may think that they could do better, but the only reason you think they could do better is because you are the product of them not having done better. So you start to realize, oh, wait a second, I was doing the best that I could at that time too. I was doing what I could as a child or as a younger person to get through that moment. Maybe I got into a screaming match with an ex-partner, like all that is like, that was the past. I was doing the best that I could at that time. Now, as you walk forward, you start to see life a little bit differently. You start to see, well, I could definitely do better today. And when are you going to do better? In the now moment when you have the opportunity to do so. You're not going to plan to go and say, let me go walk down that street. Or you may say, I'm going to go walk down that street just to prove to yourself that you won't trip as you walk off the curb. But you may be in this place too where it's like, okay, you know what? I recognize that mom and dad, my ex-partner, they all did the best that they could because it's their castle, it's their kingdom, it's their own life. It's really difficult because you want to be able to be like, you almost want to be mad at them, which is like, why couldn't you be better? If you could have been better, then I would be better today. But that's a story you're telling yourself. That comes back to finding your center, right? Because if we think about it, that story that you're telling yourself is, why am I not better today? This is a victim story. That's a story you're telling yourself, right? That's a victim story. Now, you have the choice to change that story, but it also means that you start to heal your past and you start to realize, I'm no longer allowing the past to control me. You could say with a snap of a finger right now, you were just born. And everything that's happened in your past is like a download from something outside of the now. You have the power to start to shift that story and start to take the gold from that story, but leave all of the shit behind. Because you know what? You don't need it anymore. You don't need to stay back there. You need to stay in the present, right? So you were doing the best you could at the time, and so is everyone else, is a great way to heal your wounds, recognizing that everyone's on this journey. We're all learning how to be human. We're all learning, some of us are learning how to be parents, some of us are learning how to be lovers, some of us are just learning how to walk down the street and not trip off the curb, right? So literally, right? So kids are doing the best that they can, right? And our inner child is doing the best that we can. Now, this is all part of what Dr. Carl Jung referred to as the individuation journey. This is really important because every man needs to individuate from his parents, from his school system, from his partners, from his job, from social media, from sports, the list goes on. It doesn't mean you let go of any of those things necessarily. It means that you know who you are without them. It means that you make your own independent decisions for yourself. You're not doing anything to make her happy. You're doing it to make yourself happy. And if she fits into the picture, great. And if she doesn't, fine. Doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship needs to end, but you're very clear on what your center is. And because you're clear on that, you are on this individuation path. Because the past has all of these wounds. It has all these challenges, but it's not now. The only thing that's real is now, right? We've talked about this, right? And we'll talk about it again because everyone needs reminders, right? Like we need a reminder to actually remember that we're present, right? The only thing that's real is this here and now. And so when you are walking in this path and you are healing your past, it comes down to being a sovereign man. You cannot be a mature masculine man without being a sovereign man. That king needs to sit on the throne of the castle, not the weakling prince, not a tyrant, the king. You need to be there being clear about who you are and how you are going to move forward in your life so that you do not allow the outside world, everything that's outside the castle, everything that's outside of you, right? No one out there should be controlling you, okay? You control yourself, and you should have the ability to respond to that situation when it happens. A lot of people react, right? The guy cuts you off on the highway. What are you going to do? You're going to yell back, do a pit maneuver into the back quarter panel of their car? What are you going to do? Or are you going to maintain your presence, recognize that that person is doing the best that they can? You wish they could do better, but the truth is, and this is the difficult truth, is there's a lot of bad drivers out there. There's a lot of people out there who are just trying to survive. They're just trying to survive. So how this manifests in your relationship is I'm just trying to survive, and maybe there's a part of me or her that's afraid of losing this other person because I don't know if I'll survive without them, right? So again, we're getting into the work of the inner child here, and this is all coming back to the ego. Ego, fears, the inner child being this part of us that's just doesn't know any better. They just don't know any better, right? Like they're just looking out in the world, and there's the joyful parts of the inner child. They're the ones that play and dance and create and have art, and all that is beautiful. And then you have the parts of the inner child which are wounded. It's the shadow, what's called the shadow of the inner child. He's scared of his own shadow, right? He's scared of his own shadow, right? And so what happens is when we start to become more aware in the present moment, we start to realize that the inner child can have two different voices. It can have a voice of love and being excited about that encounter with the woman or with the job or with whatever's going on in his life, or he can have a voice of fear. My brother isn't approving me of what I'm doing. My sister isn't, giving me all the support. My dad doesn't approve. Well, this is where the individuation journey, the rubber meets the road, because now you have the opportunity to define for yourself as to whether or not you're going to love that part of yourself and make him feel safe, seen, heard, worthy, and loved. This is what masculine leadership rests on. And of course, healing your past, again, depends on us letting go. Depends on us letting go. You want to be mad at that person who bullied you or harassed you or argued with you or hurt you 25 years ago. But you know what? It's actually not a good use of your focus and your energy. That's like the warrior on the wall spending more time looking at that person out there than paying attention to his own kingdom, paying attention to the present moment and everything else that's out there. So you could be so focused on what that one person did to you so long ago that, and I mean, you could see this in movies, right? In movies and in TV shows, that the person fixates. Usually it's like a crime show or crime drama, right? And we're not encouraging that at all. But you can see how they fixate. It's the only thing of their focus. So they were cheated on many years ago, or that they were abandoned when they were a child. Maybe they were left in the car while mom went to go get milk from the supermarket. Whatever it may be, they fixate on it because it's the ego. But it's in the past. And so as we strengthen the warrior here with finding your center and finding your center and healing your past, you start to recognize, okay, that warrior, when we awaken the warrior, we start to realize that we have the ability to leave those aspects in the past. They are outside of the castle. So again, I told you before about the castles, the king, warrior, magician, lover. The king sits on the throne in the castle. He defines the boundaries of the kingdom. He sets the direction, he sets the vision for the kingdom. The warrior is protecting the boundaries of the castle, but the warrior is also at the gates of the dungeon in the castle. Now, what is he doing down there? He's making sure that when you go down into the past, you can put your arms through the bars to grab information from the past, but you do not put your head through the bars. You don't live in the dungeon. You just visit it from time to time to get the information that you need, and then you come back into presence, right? The warrior has to exist when you are retrieving information from the past, including events, including previous fights and arguments and conflicts and drama. And that's the question. The question is whether or not you can meet the past with love, recognizing that everyone was doing the best they could at that time. Okay, so we've gone through find your center, awaken the warrior, and heal your past. Now it's time to strengthen the sacred masculine. Now, what is this? We're going to lean into this process consciously so that we can accelerate it. If we don't, we will continue to be like the masses who never do this work at all. They remain in a reactive place. Their relationships stay in a place of stress and conflict and drama. They end up working for other people's castles and kingdoms rather than working on their own dreams, because we only have one life, right? And so if we're not doing this work, if we're not living by our own sovereign nature and we are not the kings of our own life, then what are we doing here, right? So number one is connect with the masculine archetypes. And again, I'm going to put down here, we got king, warrior, magician, lover. I'm also going to add explorer, right? The explorer is one of Dr. Carl Jung's 12 archetypes. I don't want to get too lost here in archetypes, but the explorer is like, what else is out there? Maybe you go to the same restaurant and the same activities every Sunday, right? And this is how your life has been for years, right? And maybe that's good enough for you, but maybe you want to tap into that explorer. Maybe there's a new restaurant to try. Maybe there's a new hobby to try, right? And so we can see this as hobbies and activities and restaurants and so much more that's out there beyond the cycle and the loop of what you do day in and day out. So I really believe that that explorer energy is really important to tap into as you continue to walk this path of the warrior and the warrior's journey. Number two here is get rooted and disciplined. Again, the practice is really important. Now, I know the idea of breath work doesn't necessarily seem that exciting to someone who, especially for people who've never done it before. Even to people who've done it, it's like, but you got to do it just in the same way that you got to brush your teeth or wipe your ass or fucking go to the dentist, right? Like, it's all an important part of taking care of yourself, because that's how you protect your presence and you protect your center, right? So get rooted and disciplined around your practice. Get rooted and disciplined around your center and your values and your beliefs, right? Because the finding of your center, that whole section that we went over before, this idea is all of a sudden you may realize, you know what? I really never appreciated the way that that guy, that friend of mine, spoke to his girlfriend or spoke to my parents or spoke to me. I'm not sure if I want to keep him in my life anymore, right? Or maybe it's something like recognizing that how often you feel like I need to be, at the senior vice president level in order for me to be valuable, in order for me to finally succeed, etc. These are all things that you need to be disciplined about, realizing where are these beliefs coming from. If you were on a deserted island and you'd never been experienced to your job in corporate America or, social media and the wounds of your past, like how would you develop your ideas around you, who you are, and be disciplined about making sure that that truth is at the center and at the core of your life. Sort out your relationships. This is going to be with your partner. It's going to be with your parents. It's going to be with your colleagues. It's going to be with God. It's going to be with money. It's going to be with politics. It's going to be with all sorts of things, with the gym, right? With substances and alcohol and marijuana, right? Sex. is a big one on this. So get rooted around this. In fact, I'm going to come back to this. So get rooted in discipline around sex, right? Now, this is something sex, porn, masturbation, alcohol, weed, all of this is stuff that is actually taking you off of your higher goals. Now, if you're really clear in the earlier section around find your center about what your values actually are, right, then you know that when any activity that you're doing, including scrolling on porn and jerking off, isn't necessarily aligned with that. When you have a vision for your life, and you're clear about that vision and that mission and that purpose, and you're clear about wanting to be the best man, father, lover, leader that you can be, and you start to realize, oh, I'm spending a lot of time on Instagram. I'm spending a lot of time jerking off. I'm spending a lot of time hunting for new sexual opportunities. It is about getting clear about what your priorities are, because there's a very big difference between some of these things can really be categorized as like dopamine rushes. And dopamine is really part of that risk reward system of the brain, right? So dopamine rewards us, but it often gives us short-term gratification versus long-term goals and visions. So let's say you want to buy a beach house, a beach cottage, right? Maybe this is where you want to retire. Maybe you want to open up an ice rink, right? I don't know what it is that you want to do with your life, but whatever the vision is, that imagine getting that, and that's serotonin. I can never spell this word, serotonin. So serotonin is long-term gratification. So long-term gratification is different, but let's look at the time impact of seeking sex, porn, masturbation, alcohol, weed versus the time impact of building your life goals and your life visions. Because again, we only have one life. We never know when it's going to be taken away from us. We never know when we're going to hit that. Maybe you're having the awakening around hitting 40 years old. Maybe you just had the loss of a loved one or the loss of a partner, right? Or a health diagnosis. We don't know when it's over. We don't know. And unfortunately, you're gonna have to go through that to really get it, right? But hopefully through this program, you realize that you can get started now. You don't have to wait, right? And so when we're clear about our long-term goals and visions, then we can be clear about where we're putting our time. That's what it means here to be really rooted and disciplined, because it's easy. It's easy to get into this practice of just, I'm going to go surfing every weekend, or I'm going to play video games every weekend, or I'm just going to jerk off, or I'm just going to hunt for new Tinder matches, or whatever it may be. All that stuff is fun. And if it is taking over your life and it's coming at the cost of your long-term goals and visions, including having a family, including managing your health, making money, all those things, then you're not in actual alignment and integrity with yourself, with your own values and your own interests as you've defined them in Find Your Center. So again, get rooted and disciplined is really important. Now we say sort out our relationships here because then you start to realize, are the relationships in my life supporting me for what is important to me or not, right? So are they supporting my long-term goals or not? Now, just because they're not doesn't mean that you necessarily turn your back on them and that you reject them and you abandon them. It just means the shape of the relationship is changing, right? It means that maybe you won't dedicate as much time or value in terms of their feedback, in terms of their opinions. Only you can decide. This is part of the individuation journey. And again, it's not about becoming cold-hearted and nasty and dominating and manipulative in this path. No, that is not it. It's about being clear in your center. You are a king. You are a king who has a warrior who protects his center. And then we work with the magician powers to bring it to life, right? So that you can learn to love your life and every aspect of it, your partner, your business, right? Your body, every aspect of it is about loving your relationship with the earth, right? Nature, everything is about just love. But it takes a journey to get there, right? And so, again, sorting out your relationships here is really important. I'm going to invite you to also rewild yourself. So I just said nature, right? So nature, rewilding yourself is like really getting into the body, into the body. We spend so much time these days in our minds, planning, working, on the computer, doing things that are focused on the future with work, or doing things that are just about problem solving and not really being in the here and in the now with the person around you. So getting into the body is very, very important in order for us to, number one, stay embodied, but number two, in our presence, but number two, to rewild ourselves. What would it mean for you to go and camp on your own? What would it mean for you to be naked in your body, free of shame? What would it mean for you to be a strong, healthy man, right? What would that mean? So rewild yourself, right? Get out of the modern day comforts, okay? There's no shame here. I want to be clear because it's a lot of this is the programming of our modern culture, right? It's not your fault. But now that you're being awakened to this, now the invitation is for you to be aware of how much time you're spending on, Instagram, and you're scrolling on your phone and not in nature. Truly, how much time are you getting in nature? Is it only when you walk into the office for your commute? Is that it, right? And what can you do about that? Because we are meant to be in nature. We are not detached from nature. This idea that human beings are not animals is a very harmful idea. We're very intelligent, but and sometimes not as intelligent as we'd like to be. But when was the last time you spent time fishing near a river, or surfing, or snorkeling, diving, painting? Something in the body, something that is going to give you, even like chiseling a piece of wood, right? Like something that's going to bring you back into the body, something that's going to rewild yourself in a very beautiful way. And so the last step here is integrate the wild man and the spiritual man. So what does this mean? So you are both a wild man, an animal, and you are a spiritual man, right? You are someone who is walking this path. You are starting to get in touch with the spirituality of the inner journey. Now, spirituality is not religion. It can sometimes coincide with religion, but it's not the same thing. I want to be very clear here, right? This is about your own inner journey, about your own inner relationship with the inner child. It's about you walking as the sovereign masculine man, the king, the warrior, the magician, lover, right? When you are in this work of doing and maintaining presence and maintaining love and forgiving people for things they did 25 years ago, that is a spiritual journey. And that's the spiritual man. And when you are wrestling and when you are learning to do movement and MMA and you're getting back into working out and all those things, that's the wild man. When you can do both of those at the same time, that is the integration. That is the sacred masculine. That is something that you don't see often in the world. You either see the spiritual man who's completely disembodied and he's not living in his body. He's very frail and he's not able to channel the animal. And you have the other side of it, which is the animal who is never able to maintain his peace, his presence. He's often angry, he's punching holes in the wall, etc. So it's the merging of these two that makes you a real high value man. It makes you an embodiment of the sacred masculine, and that's the invitation for this work. All right, so now we arrive to live the dream, right? Which is my favorite module. So we've done the work here. We have found our center. We have awakened our warrior. We are developing our practice in order to strengthen that warrior, heal our past, strengthen the sacred masculine. And now it's time to really shift our life. And that may look like a shift in your relationship, but it may look as a general shift in your life and your outlook on the world in general. And so one of the things that, men who come into this program and come into this work often come because they are incentivized and motivated by their relationship. And she can sense when you're not in your center, brother, right? She can sense because she senses the mama's boy energy. Mama's boy is in every man, right? Doesn't always control every man, but it is inside every man. And so when you start to become clingy or needy, or you don't have life plans of your own, if you don't have a direction of your own, you're not in your mature masculine, and she can sense that. When you are not present, you're not able to manage your own emotions, she can really sense that, right? And so what happens is it creates a lot of conflict, a lot of stress, a lot of drama in relationships that cause a lot of men to come into this work But it also then starts to invite men into the possibilities of, okay, well, now that I'm really present and I'm protecting my present all the time, now what's next? And that's where we get into with Live the Dream. The first thing, first and foremost, is to make peace with the world. Now, that means government, politics, business, AI. It means, corruption. It means laws. It means systems that work for the few instead of the many. Over and over and over again, you have to make peace with the way the world is, okay? Because especially if you are an activist, I was an activist when I was younger, right? And I wanted to change the world. What I realized was the only real way that I could change the world was by changing myself. Okay, that's Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world, right? So when we say make peace with the world, it's not like saying, okay, that person I disagree with over there, I'm going to suddenly agree with them. That's not what we're saying, because that's the unhealthy dynamic as to how people think about peace in the modern day, or they think about ending the war over there. It's all over there. What's happening in here? What's happening in your own castle? Make peace with the world inside your own castle. Walk with your shoulders back and your spine upright so that you can be in your center as you walk through a world of chaos. It is always going to be chaotic. And this is a really tough truth that I wish was not the truth, but I have to accept it, and so do you, which is it's always going to be chaotic out there. There is no politician, there is no technology, there's no law, there's no policy, and there's certainly no project at work that's going to change that. So you have to make peace with it. What does that mean? It means come to acceptance. So this is something that I don't think I spent any time on this earlier, but now is just as good of a time to add it here, which is the grief cycle. Okay, this is the Kubler-Ross grief cycle. You can look this up if you have any questions on it. And it is denial, there's no problem. Anger, I'm pissed that there is a problem. Bargaining, well, maybe if we did something different, there wouldn't be a problem. Sadness, I'm really sad that there's a problem. And acceptance. That exists for the loss of a relationship, loss of a loved one, loss of a parent, loss of a health diagnosis, or health condition, etc., loss of health. And it also results in politics that didn't work out the way that you wanted them to work out. Okay? So when you start to get really aware of this grief cycle, you are going to see when it's happening in yourself. Easy way to tell is that you're sad about something or that you're angry about something, or bargaining, which usually comes across as overwhelmed, stressed, right? Or you're going to see it in her, okay? Or you're going to see it in the colleague. If you're seeing that, that person's in grief of some kind. So the question is, how can we rise above that grief? The answer is presence, right? Recognizing that this person is in their own process and that your job is to be the calm rock that they can rely on in the present moment. Compassionate, sure, but present. Not trying to fix, not trying to, manipulate, just being present and loving in that journey, especially if it's a romantic partner, or even for a colleague. Someone comes to you, maybe they didn't get the work right and they're really worried that they're going to get fired, right? They're in this whole concern, this anxiety is coming from a place of not being present, and they may be overwhelmed by the job because they're not getting guidance. They're in bargaining, they're in the grief cycle, right? So our job is to lead, make that child feel safe, seen, heard, worthy, and loved, right? That's masculine leadership. And knowing the Kubler-Ross grief cycle is a really important tool on that journey to not only making peace within yourself, making peace with the past, making peace with your partner, making peace with your parents, making peace with your colleagues, making peace with the world. Know the grief cycle. It's a tool for your toolbox. The second step here is to craft your vision. So maybe it is that like one day I want to own an ice rink in the desert, right? And I want to have a family of chickens living on my farm in the desert. Sounds crazy, but I'm putting something wild out there because it could be anything. It could be the beach cottage. It could be your dream job. Maybe you want to open up a whiskey bar with a bookstore, right? Whatever it is that you want to do with your life, be clear about your vision. Maybe you want to really master everything that we're talking about in this program. You want to lean into your personal healing journey and your masculinity journey. Maybe you want to focus on improving your body. Maybe you want to focus on improving your job security and your politics at work, leadership, etc. Maybe you want to focus in on your dating life or your love life, your sex life. All that stuff is you being clear about your vision, okay? Now, when you're clear about it, it's time to manifest it. Now, what does manifestation mean? It does not mean sit over a candle and make a prayer, okay? Now, prayer is important. That is one of the things that we could put in the toolbox in the practice back in Awaken the Warrior. I will put that down now to make it clear that I do care about this. And it is important. Prayer is, but manifesting your vision requires taking action on your desires and visions in detachment of the outcome. Okay? Now, what that means is you need to know what action you're taking. For example, let's say that you want to lose weight or you want to get fit. What is the action that you're taking to make that real? Sitting down in prayer and talking about it isn't actually going to change that. You're going to need to manifest it by taking action. Now, this is where people get a little held back, right? And this is some of the work that I do with my VIP clients, right? Is they don't know what the next action is. They don't have clarity on the next action or the courage to take it because that fear from the past is impacting them. So when we're saying that we want to lose weight, for example, right, then the very next step would be, well, do we need to make a change to our diet or to exercise, right? Is that where we want to be? What are our goals? Let's clarify what our goals are. And then we go into the place of, okay, what's the nearest gym? Should I join on a membership or not? Should I get a trainer or not, right? What does my workout schedule look like? What are my workouts, routines look like? And go from there. And can I stay on that path? Now, again, that's just about losing weight and getting healthy. But if you're doing this program, you may realize that there's a different type of health, the spiritual health, that you may want to invest in. And so that's being clear about your presence, being clear about what is it that I need to do to heal my past, awaken the warrior, really strengthen the sacred masculine so that I can walk through this life knowing that I've consciously created my life. I've consciously chosen my life. So again, only you can decide what that vision is. But when it's time to manifest it, you're going to look to need to have the clarity on what the next action is and the courage to take that action. Again, detachment of the outcome. Why? Because it's just like in dating, for example. You go up and you approach the girl or you message her or whatever. You have to detach from the outcome. That's what confidence really is, the attachment, the courage to take action in a detachment of the outcome. That's what the confidence is for the warrior's journey, and that's what makes you very magnetic. If you're very clear on your vision, if you're very clear on your center, then you can then be clear on the next action that you need to take, and then from there have the courage to go and take the action in spite of fear, in spite of the curb that you tripped over 25 years ago, or whatever it may be, or the fact that your mom and dad never approved of anything when you were younger, whatever it may be, right? Or a failed business in the past, or a health condition, or you were never good at, sports, or whatever it may be. Anything from outside the here and now, we recognize it as being from the past. We don't allow it to control us, and we have the courage to overcome the fear of the ego, the inner child in there, who is scared that it might happen again, right? So again, we manifest our vision accordingly by taking action in detachment of the outcome. We can't care about whether or not someone agrees with us or not. We can't care as to whether or not someone buys our first plate of food if we're opening up a restaurant or a food truck. We can't attach to the outcome because the attachment is, number one, an ego reinforcement thing, And it's going to lead to expectations, assumptions, and disappointments when it doesn't happen. You're attaching your success, you're attaching your worth, your self-worth, your ability to love or to be loved, to be worthy, to be safe, to whether or not that thing happens. The girl says yes and shares her number, or the girl doesn't. It actually doesn't have anything to do with you. But for someone who hasn't started this journey, they attach this idea of, I gotta get that number. Now, for the guy who fails, he doesn't think he's a very worthy person. For the guy who succeeds, he starts to subconsciously think that he's only worthy if he gets the number. So he may actually go off and go try to get more numbers to reinforce that idea that he is safe, seen, heard, worthy, and loved. So you can see how these patterns keep on coming over and over and over again. Now, as you do this work, you become the hero of your story. Remember how we spoke about this in Find Your Center, where we can rewrite the story. This is what it means to rewrite the story, to not allow the past to control us anymore. To become the hero of our own story means that we are acting with courage to manifest our desires and visions independent of what happened in the past. And this also means in your relationship. If you love this woman, you're in a heart-to-heart contact with this woman, now is the invitation for you to lean into this work for yourself first and foremost, so that she can feel safe in the relationship. And if she's not the right one for you, for the next woman who comes into your life, she will be attracted to the true person that you really are, because you are going to be rising in your authenticity. And that's how you become the hero of your story and live the dream. All right, so that's the warrior's journey. I hope you enjoyed the program, and you can see now that this is actually a path. This is a journey, and only you can decide to go on it. You may be inspired to go on it for your relationship, your romantic relationship. You may be inspired because of some sort of awakening that you've had in your life. Maybe the idea that we don't get to live forever, and you really want to make sure that you're living at the highest possible vibration to your particular dreams. When you are on this path, it's going to change your entire life, but it doesn't happen overnight. So what I'd like to invite you to do is I'd like to invite you to book a call with me to determine what the best next step is for you at this point. We have other courses, we have VIP one-on-one work, we have retreats. It all depends on what your needs are at this stage of your own journey, of your relationship, of whether it be at work or at home. We have to go through that together and navigate it so that you can get to live the dream in your own life. Again, this is the warrior's journey. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to go on this path. Very, very, very few people will ever do the work that is inside this program. And I want to honor you for taking the work to invest in yourself and to invest in your own dream of life. See you soon.